Jane had warned her neighbor, Karen, time and time again, "Stay off my precious hedges." But the HOA president just laughed, her SUV crushing the delicate branches with each vengeful pass. Little did Karen know I had a plan. A twisted trap that would deliver the ultimate payback. This is the untold story of how one woman's reckless entitlement led to her very public downfall. The tires crunched against the freshly manicured hedge, Karen's massive SUV swallowing the green foliage in one merciless gulp. I peered through the living room curtains, my knuckles white-knuckling the windowsill. This was the 5th time this week. "That's it," I muttered, storming outside. "Karen, what the hell do you think you're doing?" The older woman glanced up from her phone, a condescending smirk spreading across her face. "Oh, hi there, neighbor. I was just trimming your hedges for you." "You're welcome." "Trimming?" I scoffed. "You're destroying them. These took me years to grow." Karen shrugged, tossing her glossy hair over her shoulder. "Well, maybe you should have planted them on your side of the property line then. Not my problem." "The property line is clearly marked. You're encroaching." "Whatever." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "I'm the HOA president. I can do whatever I want." My jaw tightened as rage bubbled in my chest. This wasn't the first time Karen had used her position of power to bully the neighbors. But enough was enough. I was done being the doormat. "That's it. I'm calling the cops." Karen's eyes widened in alarm. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would. And I will." I pulled out my phone, fingers flying across the screen. "Let's see how quickly your precious HOA status can get you out of a destruction of property charge." Her nostrils flared. "You're making a big mistake." "No, Karen. You're the one who made the mistake." I pressed the call button and held the phone to my ear. "Hello, police. I'd like to report." "Wait." Karen lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Okay, I'll stop. Just don't call the cops, please." I raised a single brow. "Are you sure about that?" She hesitated, eyes darting around nervously. "Yes, I'm sure. I'll stay off your precious hedges from now on. Scout's honor." I studied her for a long moment, considering. Karen was a known liar and manipulator. There was no way I could trust her word. But maybe, just maybe, I could use this to my advantage. All right, fine. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. "But I'm warning you, Karen. One more time, and there will be consequences." She nodded vigorously. Yes, of course. It won't happen again. I promise." As she scurried back to her car, I couldn't help the small smile that tugged at the corners of my mouth. The seeds of my plan had been planted. Now, I just had to wait for the perfect moment to reap my revenge. For the next few weeks, Karen seemed to keep her word. Her massive SUV stayed off my carefully tended hedges, and I breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe, just maybe, I had gotten through to her. But then, on a sunny Saturday morning, the familiar crunching sound reached my ears. I raced to the window, heart pounding, to see Karen once again plowing through my prized greenery. No, I yelled, rushing outside. "I told you to stay off my hedges." Karen glanced up, a smug grin plastered across her face. "Oops, my bad. I guess I just can't see them very well in my big car." "That's it." I stormed over to her vehicle, planting myself directly in her path. "I warned you, Karen. Now you're going to pay the consequences." She scoffed. "Oh, please. What are you going to do? Call the cops again?" Her lips curled into a sneer. "Face it, loser. I run this neighborhood. There's nothing you can do." I inhaled sharply, my fingers curling into fists at my sides. "We'll see about that." With that, I turned on my heel and marched back into the house, slamming the door behind me. Karen's laughter rang out in the still air, only fueling my rage. Enough was enough. It was time to put my plan into action. I spent the rest of the day meticulously digging a narrow trench along the edge of my property, just beyond the hedges. I reinforced the sides with sturdy wooden planks and filled it with a thick, viscous liquid. A simple, yet effective trap. The next morning, I woke early and positioned myself at the window, coffee in hand. Sure enough, right on cue, Karen's SUV came rumbling down the street. I watched with bated breath as she approached the hedges, a smug grin on her face. This was it, the moment of reckoning. As the massive vehicle rolled over the carefully concealed trench, the ground gave way. Karen's SUV lurched sideways, the front tires sinking deep into the thick, gooey substance. She slammed on the brakes, but it was no use. The vehicle was well and truly stuck. Triumph coursed through me as I watched Karen's face twist in horror. She scrambled to open the door, her designer pumps sliding in the muck as she stumbled out of the car. What the? She spun around, eyes wild. What is the meaning of this? I stepped out onto the porch, a sardonic smile playing on my lips. I told you there would be consequences, Karen. Her gaze snapped to mine, pure fury etched across her features. You did this. You set a trap. Consider it payback for destroying my hedges. I shrugged nonchalantly. Looks like your little SUV is stuck. Might want to call a tow truck. Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. You're going to pay for this. You. Save it, Karen. I held up a hand, silencing her. I'm done listening to your empty threats. This neighborhood is done being bullied by the HOA president. Time for a change. With that, I turned and retreated back into the house, the sound of Karen's furious screams echoing in my wake. The next few days were absolute chaos in the neighborhood. Word of Karen's humiliating predicament had spread like wildfire, and the entire community seemed to be relishing in her downfall. I, on the other hand, was doing my best to avoid the spotlight. The last thing I needed was retaliation from the deposed HOA president. But Karen seemed to have bigger problems on her hands. As I sipped my morning coffee, peering through the curtains, I watched in amusement as a tow truck finally managed to extract Karen's SUV from the trench. She stormed away, her designer outfit caked in mud, face twisted in fury. Serves you right, you entitled witch, I muttered, taking another sip. The following week, the neighborhood was abuzz with rumors that Karen had been ousted from her position as HOA president. Apparently, the other members had grown tired of her autocratic reign and saw this as the perfect opportunity to stage a coup. I couldn't help but chuckle as I overheard the hushed conversations on my daily walks. It seemed my little trap had set off a chain reaction of events that I could have never predicted. But my moment of triumph was short-lived. One afternoon, as I was tending to my precious hedges, a shadow fell over me. I glanced up to see Karen standing there, her eyes narrowed to slits. You! She spat, her voice dripping with venom. This is all your fault. I straightened, brushing the dirt from my hands. I have no idea what you're talking about, Karen. Don't play dumb with me. She jabbed an accusatory finger in my direction. You set that trap, and now I've lost everything. My position, my reputation, all because of you. I shrugged nonchalantly. Maybe you should have thought about the consequences before you started destroying my property. Consequences. Karen let out a harsh, mirthless laugh. Oh, you have no idea what kind of consequences you're about to face. A chill ran down my spine at the malice in her tone. Is that a threat? Take it however you want. She turned on her heel, tossing a parting shot over her shoulder. This isn't over, you little weed. Not by a long shot. I watched her retreating figure, my stomach twisting with unease. Karen had always been vindictive, but this was different. There was a cold, calculated edge to her words that sent a shiver down my spine. As I resumed my work, the nagging feeling of dread refused to leave me. What had I unleashed? And more importantly, what was Karen planning? The following weeks were tense and uneasy, as I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder for any sign of Karen's retaliation. The neighborhood, once abuzz with gossip about her downfall, had grown eerily quiet. It was as if everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I, too, found myself on edge, jumping at the slightest unexpected noise. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle in the bushes, had me on high alert. I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was out there, plotting her revenge. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, a frantic pounding at my front door nearly made me jump out of my skin. Heart racing, I cautiously approached the entrance and peered through the peephole. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, her usually cheerful face twisted with panic. I yanked open the door. "Mrs. Henderson, what's wrong?" "Oh, thank goodness you're home," she gasped, clutching at her chest. "You have to come quick. It's your Hedges." My blood ran cold. What happened? Someone's setting them on fire," she cried. I didn't even stop to grab a coat, bolting out the door and racing towards the source of the commotion. Sure enough, as I rounded the corner, I could see thick, black smoke billowing from the direction of my property. "No," I shouted, pushing past the crowd of horrified onlookers. "My Hedges." But it was too late. By the time I reached the burning foliage, the flames had already consumed a sizable portion of the greenery. I stared in horror, watching helplessly as the fire crackled and hissed, devouring the delicate branches. Who did this? I whirled around, scanning the faces of the gathered neighbors. Did anyone see anything? Mrs. Henderson stepped forward, her eyes round with fear. I think it was Karen." My heart sank. "Karen?" She nodded shakily. "I saw her skulking around your property earlier, muttering under her breath. And then, just a few minutes ago, I saw her run off towards her car. I tried to stop her, but she just sped away." I clenched my fists, fury and dread warring within me. That vindictive witch. I knew she'd try to get back at me. Without another word, I raced to the edge of the charred hedges, desperately trying to douse the remaining flames with a garden hose. But the damage was already done. My years of hard work, my prized possession, reduced to smoldering embers. As the firefighters arrived and the crowd dispersed, I stood there, shoulders slumped and defeated. Karen had struck, and this time, the consequences were devastating. The days that followed were a blur of chaos and heartbreak. The fire department had managed to contain the blaze, but the damage to my beloved Hedges was irreparable. Blackened, charred branches protruded from the scorched earth, a grim reminder of Karen's vindictive act. I spent hours meticulously combing through the remnants, desperately trying to salvage what I could. But it was no use. The once lush and vibrant greenery had been reduced to a sorry, skeletal ruin. As I knelt in the dirt, surveying the devastation, a crushing wave of grief washed over me. These Hedges had been my pride and joy, a labor of love that I had nurtured for years. And now, they were gone, destroyed by the vindictive actions of a woman I had once considered a neighbor. The police had been called, of course, but without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. Karen had covered her tracks well, and her sudden departure from the neighborhood only added to the mystery. "She'll slip up eventually," the officer had assured me. "We'll be keeping a close eye on her." But the words offered little comfort. I knew Karen, and I knew she wouldn't rest until she'd exacted her full measure of revenge. In the days that followed, I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every unexpected sound or movement. I had taken to carrying a baseball bat with me wherever I went, just in case. The once peaceful sanctuary of my own home had become a fortress, a place of refuge from the looming threat of Karen's retribution. As I tossed and turned each night, haunted by visions of Karen's gleeful face as she watched my beloved Hedges burn, a gnawing sense of dread consumed me. What else did she have planned? And how far would she go to destroy me? The uncertainty was maddening, and it was slowly eating away at my sanity. I had to do something, anything, to regain a sense of control. But the harder I tried to anticipate Karen's next move, the more powerless I felt. In the end, the decision was taken out of my hands. One fateful night, as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a sudden, ominous sound from the backyard sent a chill down my spine. Quietly, I crept to the window, peering out into the darkness, and there, in the faint moonlight, I saw a shadowy figure moving stealthily through the charred remains of my hedges. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached for the baseball bat, every nerve ending on high alert. This was it, the moment I had been dreading. Karen had come back to finish the job. Gripping the baseball bat tightly, I slowly pushed open the back door and stepped outside, my eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. The cool night air nipped at my skin as I crept forward, every sense on high alert. There, in the faint moonlight, I could make out the silhouette of a figure creeping between the charred remains of my once lush hedges. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the distinctive shape of Karen's oversized purse. "Karen," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. "I know you're out there. Show yourself." The figure froze, then slowly turned to face me. Even in the dim light, I could see the rage burning in her eyes. "So, you finally decided to stop cowering inside and face me, huh?" She spat, her voice dripping with venom. "What are you doing out here, Karen?" I demanded, leveling the bat at her. "Come any closer, and I won't hesitate to use this." She let out a harsh, mirthless laugh. "Oh, please. Do you really think a little bat is going to stop me?" Before I could react, she lunged forward, a dark object clutched in her hand. I instinctively swung the bat, but she easily dodged the blow, her free hand lashing out and knocking it from my grasp. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as I recognized the glint of metal in her hand. "Is that a knife?" "That's right, you little weed." Karen's lips twisted into a cruel smile as she advanced. "Time for me to prune your sorry existence." I turned and ran, desperate to put distance between us. But Karen was fast, her long legs quickly closing the gap. I could hear her ragged breathing behind me as I darted through the shadows, searching for a place to hide. Suddenly, my foot caught on a root, and I went sprawling to the ground, the air whooshing from my lungs. Karen pounced, straddling my back and pressing the cold steel of the knife against my throat. "Any last words, you meddling pest?" she hissed. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the end. But just as Karen began to apply pressure, a sudden, bone-chilling howl pierced the night. Both of us froze, our heads snapping towards the sound. In the distance, a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the darkness, followed by the unmistakable silhouette of a massive, hulking figure. Karen's grip on the knife faltered, and I seized the opportunity, twisting free and scrambling to my feet. Without a moment's hesitation, I turned and ran, the sound of Karen's terrified screams fading into the night. My heart pounded in my chest as I raced through the backyard, the sounds of Karen's terrified cries spurring me forward. I didn't dare look back, too afraid of what I might see. Finally, I burst through the back door, slamming it shut behind me and locking it with trembling hands. Breathless, I leaned against the wall, trying to calm my racing thoughts. What the hell was that thing? And where had it come from? The image of those glowing eyes and hulking silhouette burned in my mind, sending a shiver down my spine. It had to be some kind of wild animal, prowling the neighborhood in search of prey. And somehow, it had managed to save me from Karen's murderous attack. As the adrenaline wore off, a deep sense of unease settled over me. Karen was still out there, and who knew what that creature was capable of? I needed to call the police to get help before things spiraled even further out of control. But just as I reached for my phone, a thunderous pounding at the back door made me jump. "Open up." Karen's frantic voice carried through the wood. "Please, you have to help me." I hesitated, torn between my desire to see her get her comeuppance and the nagging worry that the creature was still lurking out there. Cautiously, I peered through the window, but the yard was eerily silent, cloaked in darkness. Taking a deep breath, I pulled open the door, Karen immediately stumbling inside. Her designer clothes were torn and covered in dirt, her usually pristine hair a tangled mess. She slammed the door shut behind her, then whirled around, eyes wild with terror. That thing, she gasped, chest heaving. It came out of nowhere. I crossed my arms over my chest, fighting the urge to feel sympathy for her. What thing, Karen? I don't know. She shook her head frantically. Some kind of beast. It just appeared and started chasing me. I barely managed to get away. I studied her for a long moment, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to let her stew in her own fear, to experience the same dread and hopelessness that I had felt at her hands. But another part, the part that still clung to the hope of resolving this peacefully, knew I had to at least try to help. All right, fine. I gestured towards the living room. Come on, let's call the police. Maybe they can send someone to investigate. Karen's eyes widened in alarm. The police? No, you can't. They'll arrest me. I just know it. Well, what did you expect? I scoffed. You tried to attack me with a knife, remember? I panicked. Okay. She wrung her hands nervously. Please, you have to help me. I can't go to jail. I hesitated, the weight of her desperate plea tugging at my conscience. As much as I loathed to admit it, I couldn't just abandon her to the mercy of that unknown creature. Not when I had the power to intervene. With a resigned sigh, I gestured towards the couch. Fine, but you're staying here until the police arrive. And if you try anything, I won't hesitate to call them myself. Karen nodded vigorously, sinking down onto the cushions, her entire body trembling. Thank you, she whispered, the words barely audible. As I dialed the emergency number, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Had I truly seen the last of that mysterious beast? And would Karen's newfound fear of it be enough to finally curb her vindictive ways? The police arrived within minutes, their sirens cutting through the eerie silence of the night. As the officers questioned Karen and searched the backyard for any sign of the mysterious creature, I stood by, still reeling from the evening's events. Karen, to her credit, managed to keep her composure, spinning a tale of a terrifying beast that had chased her from my property. The officers seemed skeptical at first, but as they examined the charred remains of my hedges and the evidence of the earlier knife attack, their expressions grew increasingly grave. In the end, they had no choice but to take Karen into custody, much to her dismay. As they led her away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. But the triumph was short-lived. In the days that followed, the neighborhood was abuzz with rumors and speculation of the mysterious creature that had apparently taken up residence in the area. Sightings were reported, and the local news outlets had a field day, dubbing it the Hedge Hound and sensationalizing the story beyond all recognition. I, on the other hand, found myself in an unwelcome spotlight. Neighbors who had once been content to ignore my plight now bombarded me with questions, each one more intrusive than the last. And the police, while they had arrested Karen, seemed more interested in the beast than in the details of our ongoing feud. As the pressure mounted, I found myself retreating further and further into the solace of my own home, the once vibrant hedges now a haunting reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. I had gotten my revenge, but at what cost? It wasn't until several weeks later, when the local newspaper ran a headline announcing Karen's release from jail on a technicality, that I realized the true gravity of the situation. She was out there, somewhere, no doubt seething with resentment and plotting her next move. And lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike, was the mysterious Hedge Hound, a wild card that neither of us could control. As I stared out the window, watching the remains of my hedges sway in the breeze, A chill ran down my spine. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. And with Karen and the beast both on the loose, I knew that the true test of my resilience was still to come.